You know, I've never understood why the level is called Metal Harbor. Harbors are literally made out of metal. I mean, what's next? Calling a forest level Green Forest? Oh yeah, I guess that is what's next. It is my belief that Metal Harbor is the best level in Sonic Adventure 2. I know what you may be thinking. How can you say that when Mad Space is literally right there? And to that, I say, I don't know. Well, I guess I made a statement, so I might as well try my best to explain my reasoning before I get flamed for it. Metal Harbor, Sonic Adventure 2's best level. I hope you enjoy. Before diving into the level itself, I think it's important to look at the context behind why Sonic's... what was it again? Oh yeah, escaping from a military base. To give you the abridged version, Sonic was captured by the Guardian Units of Nation, also known as Gun, which will be important to remember for later. They think he's responsible for doing some pretty awful things, so how does he respond? Well, by doing what any logical person would do and jump out of a helicopter with nothing but a sheet of metal to cushion his fall. After helping raise the insurance rates in the San Francisco area, he destroys millions of dollars worth of military equipment, meets Shadow who says "Sayonara, Sonic," then is captured by Gun again and taken to Prison Island. Prison Island is like the modern day Alcatraz, but the only people held there are old men who had their granddaughter murdered and 3-foot-tall hedgehogs. Amy, along with Tails, show up shortly after, and Amy runs off to find Sonic while Tails fights against Dr. Eggman. Amy finds Sonic locked up, sets him free, and then he blasts out of there faster than a Taco Bell burrito blasts out of my bowels on a cold Tuesday night. Well, now that you're all caught up with the story, it's time to take an actual look at the level. Right away when you start the level, you can see a pattern start forming. All of Sonic's levels start with action right away, and the easiest way to convey that is for him to fall into the gameplay. City Escape, we see him fall from the sky, Green Forest has him fly in on screen from above, we see him dropping into frame in Pyramid Cave and Crazy Gadget, and Final Rush has Sonic flying into some rails right away. All of them start with some form of automation to simulate speed and action for the player right away. Metal Harbor is no different. Even though Sonic seems to be touching the ground, you can't really do much but move left and right here. Also, I just wanted to point out that all of Shadow's levels do the same thing as well. Radical Highway, Sky Rail, and Final Chase all start off with Shadow landing on some grind rails, and White Jungle drops Shadow onto a dash panel that propels him into the opening section of the level. Okay, back to Metal Harbor now. After you realize that you're falling, you see that everything in this level is suspended over water. There's no saving you if you fall off of a platform, so you need to make sure that every jump counts or else you'll be swimming with the fishies. Sonic then gets dropped onto some dash panels. They put 3 here just to make sure you don't miss them, and off Sonic goes. But wait, did you see that? On the right side of the platform we see a small helpless raccoon. Now I don't know how the raccoon got up here, but we can only assume that this raccoon is a spy sent by the government to track Sonic's every move. After running past the raccoon spy, we go flying off this ramp and pause! There are 3 things our eyes are attracted to in this shot alone. The first of these is staring us right in our face. A giant loop. Not just a giant loop though, a special giant loop. Now we've seen Sonic go through loops in his games before, but this is the first full loop we've seen in this game. Sure, there was that loop in City Escape, but he runs down the side of a wall. He never actually finishes the loop. Is this a technicality? Yes. But it goes to show that while this level is trying to teach the player things, like how these dash panels will send you forward, it's also trying to grow and improve on what's already been shown previously. Okay, now let's go back to the money shot of this jump. The giant missile with Gun spelled out in big bold letters and the Gun logo near the top of it. While this is just a missile, it's some subtle foreshadowing of things to come in the future. The final thing that will attract our eyes, and especially our ears, are the sounds of seagulls flying above the player. At points throughout the level, Sonic will be running on through and you can hear the chirping of seagulls, reminding us that this place is on an island. We're not anywhere near the middle of a country, we're stranded on some pile of rocks miles away from any other civilization. You may remember hearing these seagulls as you played this level, but the seagull sounds will only play once you're close enough to them, like for example jumping through their whole flock while they're minding their own business. After disturbing their peace, Sonic runs up this loop and we can see another giant gun missile reminding us where we are and who we're trying to escape from. After going through the loop, we see this trail of rings to the left of us and a path going forward. Let's put a pin in this section, we'll come back to it later once we have more knowledge of what this path of rings could mean. We keep running forward, jump off our next ramp, and that's the first 10 seconds of the level. Yeah, all that brain stimulant that's just been shoved into our faces, only 10 seconds. As we land on the next platform, we see a penguin, probably an acquaintance to the raccoon that we met previously, the path ahead, and 2 beetle enemies. At this point, we're going to jump around a bit because I want to talk about how this level emphasizes speed using enemies. In City Escape, about half the enemies were equipped with weapons to shoot at Sonic and slow him down. Here, these guys are just chilling, floating in midair, not caring at all about what Sonic does. We've learned previously that homing attacking enemies usually leads to a reward. So we homing attack these 2 beetles and land in front of a peacock? Huh. Maybe the other 2 critters were actually rewards for good play, and not spies sent by gun. Well, now that we can watch Sunday Night Football, now that we can create a flying type chow with the peacock's ability, we can move forward and we see that if enemies are lined up like this, we should homing attack them because not only will they help us reach a further part of the level, they can also lead us to rewards. Like the next 3 beetles lead us to the next platform, the following leads us to a chow box, the ones after that lead us across the ocean, and so on. All of these beetles are meant to be used as a way of progression, not as a distraction. This is the point I've been trying to make so far. Everything this level does is about helping the player get from point A to point B in the most efficient way possible. There are no slow paths for the player to take, just ones that make the player go slightly faster, if that makes sense. Now, while you could go through the whole loop at the beginning, no one is stopping you from just jumping off and shaving a second or 2 off your time. Instead of homing attacking the enemies, just spin dash jump around them to save a second. It's not too much faster, but this level doesn't have any slow routes in it, like many other levels have. It just has ways, intentional or not, to shave off some time. Going back to where we were before we derailed, we see the beetles as previously mentioned. We've already talked about them, so we'll skip them for now, but we march on forward as we see a checkpoint ahead with a spring after it. Now we know that springs are helpful, so we take it and land right in front of a bunch of beetles suspended over the water. With the seagulls chirping from up above, you know that if you fail to land even one of your homing attacks, you're dead meat for sure. You decide to go for it, homing attacking 1 beetle after the other, and all of them fall. These enemies are no match for your strength and you take them down without them even putting up a fight. You're proud of your achievement, but then you think back and realize there were a couple of enemies that you missed. And there was an extra life icon on the left that looks like it was within reach. After praying to God, he eventually reverses time so you can go back and try and get that extra life. You start the homing attack chain again, this time going left, when suddenly, without warning, this other golden beetle appears. You don't know what to do. The enemy just appeared out of thin air. Without too much time left, you homing attack the golden beetle, destroy it, and continue the chain landing safely on the platform you were once on before some divine intervention happened. Now you're faced with a new problem. There's a huge gap in front of you and only some rings that look like they're leading you forward. You don't know what to do, so you talk to Omochao, who asks if you tried using the light speed dash. You have no idea what that is, but you do see something off to the left that looks like it will take you somewhere. It takes you up in the air, and you see some green light with something in the middle of it. These are the light speed shoes. Omochao explains that these shoes are meant to be used on trails of rings. Maybe we could use it on the path below to get across the water. So we jump down, press the action button in front of the first ring, and sure enough, off we go collecting rings along our path. Now this section, which we'll be calling the hangar, is probably the most open section of this level. If you desire to, you can just run forward, but if you want to, there are a few secrets that can be found throughout this area. If it's your first time, you'll have a whole swarm of jets on you firing off several missiles to try and stop you from moving forward. While you may think they're random and all spawn in at once, that's not actually how it works. There are 5 triggers, we'll call them, that activate when Sonic is close to it. The first of these appear during the light speed dash, which just sends 1 jet to shoot missiles down the middle of the hangar. The second trigger is right after the first set of dash panels. It only sends 1 jet that shoots a couple of missiles off to the side, but it doesn't really do much else besides that. The third trigger is right before the second set of dash panels. It triggers 2 jets to fly in this time, but only one of them shoots missiles and their target is right after the second set of dash panels. The fourth trigger is right before the final set of dash panels off to the right. Only 1 jet is sent this time and they shoot some missiles that land right in front of the trail of rings that you're meant to light speed dash on. The final trigger is literally right in front of the final dash panel. This one only has 1 jet flyby and it shoots 3 missiles that are aimed right at where Sonic lands after the light speed dash. Fun fact, you can actually avoid triggering the final 2 jets if you just go around the left side of the area, making sure not to fall off. It's not useful at all, but it's something you can do. Now that was me just walking through it. You can try it at home for yourself if you have a copy. Anyways, in practice, here's what it looks like. Pretty cool, right? Before we leave this area though, let's look at a few of the secrets this section has to offer. The first of these is that as we're watching the jets fly by, there's also this giant radio tower looming over us on the left, probably signaling to the pilots where our position is and where to strike. If we follow our intuition to explore on the left a little bit, we see an extra life icon that looks like it's just too high for us to jump up and grab. Running over to it reveals some invisible beetles, just like the golden one we saw earlier. I wonder if this knowledge will come in handy for the future. We also see some containers on the left. The left and right containers seem to be empty, but upon further inspection, those invisible beetles appear once again to try and scare us. But it doesn't work. A simple homing attack removes them from our sight and also helps waste the military's budget. We get to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. The middle container houses a Chow box, and above that appears to be something that looks like the altar of the Master Emerald from Sonic's previous adventure, but much, much smaller. By coming back later with more upgrades, we're able to use the Mystic Melody to summon some platforms off to the right, leading us to either an extra life, or if you're playing Mission 3, then to the Lost Chow. But we'll take a look at the extra missions later. Moving back to the center of the hangar, we see 4 sets of dash panels. The first 3 are propelling Sonic forward, but it's that 4th one that's a little interesting. See, while it's pushing Sonic further into the level, it also looks like there could be some secrets if we backtrack from that area. Lo and behold, we find another one of our raccoon friends running in circles, trying to avoid getting hit by any of the missiles being launched at Sonic. But what if you don't care about exploring at all? What if you just hit the hangar and wanted to run forward? Well then let's rewind to when you land on the platform. You run through the dash panels at top speed, and see a trail of rings up ahead. You're going too fast to just stop and use the lightspeed dash. You'll need to use the lightspeed dash while running at full speed. You line yourself up, and you fall. This is it. It's over. Looks like you need to restart. Oh, never mind. Failing to do the lightspeed dash here will just land you on a missile that takes you further into the level. From here you can try to lightspeed dash again, but moving at a much slower pace this time. It's this progression of teaching the player how to use your abilities that I really like about this level. You're not punished for screwing up in any way. The developers are throwing you a bone in case you're just a slow learner or don't fully grasp the concept yet. Not everyone is a 20-something-year-old with almost 2 decades of Sonic under their belt. For some people, this is their first ever game, so instead of berating them with difficult sections, the developers have been so gracious to be a little hand-holdy, which I really like here. Finally, moving off the hangar, the path is pretty straightforward. There's a path of rings that if you lightspeed dash, drops you right into a dash panel, propelling you up this half loop that shoots you out onto some springs. And then you run down that same loop, but this time on top of it, and land in front of what looks to be some sort of barrier trying to stop the player. Here's where we reach the only slow part of this level. In City Escape, we learned that we're able to roll under some sections of the level if Sonic is too tall to walk underneath it. And there are some green arrows here pointing downward. We try it again, and it works! We see a pulley system again. And we know that they'll pull us upward because we've used it before. So we take it to a higher path, see another section where you must roll under and take the pulley, and we make it to the top. Once you finish making your way to the top, you're met with a familiar sight, but reversed. There's a giant loop straight ahead and a giant missile with gun iconography all over it. Instead of it being on the right though, it's on the left of Sonic this time. We can also see 3 other missiles from right up here. We know that gun is not a force to be messed with. They have the means to hunt us down, and we gotta get out of here. The camera follows Sonic down this decline and then zooms out once we get to the center of the loop, really emphasizing the size of this thing and just how small Sonic is compared to his surroundings. Once we make it back to the bottom of the loop, we're propelled forward. Nothing can stop us now! Uh-oh. Floor's gone. Looks like we're just gonna die. Just kidding! We easily fly over this section of emptiness because we're just so cool and awesome. Moving forward, it's all similar to encounters we've had previously. We roll under the barrier, homing attacks some beetles across the water, and are rewarded with a nice and easy 10 rings. We also run into our 3rd and final Chow box, rewarding us with a phoenix if we can destroy the other 2 Chow boxes. If we shift our focus to right in front of us, we see a checkpoint and what looks to be a mini rocket that will launch us forward. Now, if we fell during one of the previous lightspeed dash sections, we would know that these are here to help guide the player to a further part of the level. If not though, then this is the first time we're experiencing this. Looking past the rocket, we can see what looks to be the base of a missile and what looks like to be a launch pad for the missile. Now, if you've been paying attention, you would notice that all the other launch pads we've seen throughout the level don't have any missiles in them, and subsequently, all the missiles we've seen aren't ready to launch since they aren't on a launch pad. We're not really thinking about that at this point though, you're just focused on finishing this level, so you take the missile and land on the launch pad. Okay, everything seems normal. What's the worst that could happen?
Missile launch in 15 seconds.
It all comes back to you now. None of the missiles were in launch pads because they weren't ready to launch. This one is in a launch pad, meaning it's firing very, very soon. The timer starts counting down, your palms start sweating, the screen starts shaking, you have no choice but to leave this poor defensive seal behind, and you make it to the top with hardly any time left to spare. The missile starts blasting off. The launch pad breaks, and you see rings? I don't remember any rings as I was running up the launch pad. So what gives? Well, if we rewind the tape, we can see some of the beetles off to the left of Sonic as we jump onto the missile. They seem really far away though. I wonder if we were able to reach them. Maybe we can find the rings we saw earlier too. You restart the level, come back to the section, and decide to risk it. You jump and out of nowhere, 2 beetles appear, creating an easy path to homing attack across. You need to go fast though, you only have about 6-7 seconds left at this point. Thankfully, Sonic is known for his speed. If he were known for anything else, he'd be burnt like a crisp. You keep climbing up the launch pad, finding the set of rings you saw earlier. You remember how you can lightspeed dash to traverse land much quicker and have no time to waste. You press the action button and glide through the rings with ease, landing right in front of a set of springs. With less than 2 seconds left, you bounce on them hoping to reach the missile, but then you see that there's one more spring left you need to bounce off of. You go forward, just praying you make it, and with less than a second left, you hit the final spring, grabbing onto the missile, and blast off into the sky. You start to wonder why anyone would do that, unless they want to destroy a few more robots to get another 10 rings. But off to the side, you look towards your score and you see you got an extreme bonus, granting you 1500 points. When you do the bottom path, you were only granted a type bonus worth 800 points. Does doing harder challenges grant a higher point bonus? At this point, you know of the score bonus at the end of each level. Maybe by going for the tougher challenges, you're able to get a higher score, collecting that coveted A rank you so desperately want. Regardless, you go flying up into the air holding onto the missile. The music fades away, you hear the chirping of seagulls once again, and then you jump off into what looks to be some sort of long, empty hallway. As you crash through, the music comes back in, kicking it up a notch. You grab one of the pieces of sheet metal you broke, and take a little snowboarding trip. As you're going down, you see some rings and an extra life that Gun was just so happy to leave for you in your path to collect. As you make your way towards the bottom, we go through one more loop, and in the background you see one more missile that looks like it's going to be ready to launch soon. You dread the idea of climbing up another launch pad, but as you finish going through the loop, you see the goal ring, so you decide to just let the game take you forward and finish the level. If you were speedy enough and took the right paths, you collect your A rank and move on with your day. Now while the level design and analysis section of this video is done, we still have a few more things to talk about, like the music. As you're running through this military base, destroying their equipment, you'll be rocking out to That's the Way I Like It, a jazz rock symphony that helps define the environment Sonic's running through. It's a moderately fast song, bumping at 105 beats per minute. The title of the song may be a bit familiar to those with keen eyes. If we go back to the first cutscene of the Hero Side story, the very thing we hear out of Sonic's mouth is,
"Talk about low-budget flights, no food or movies, I'm out of here. I like running better."
The thing Sonic likes is running, and Metal Harbor's whole philosophy is just to keep the player moving straight and keep Sonic moving forward. No sharp corners where you might need to stop, no annoying keys you need to grab to progress, you just keep moving forward and nothing can stop you. That's the way Sonic likes it. The second song that plays here, the one after you jump off the missile, is titled Can't Stop, So What? It's a faster melody, running at 144 beats per minute, and is meant to raise the player's adrenaline. Sonic just jumped out of a missile, and now they're snowboarding down a hallway as the military is trying to catch up with him, blaming him for crimes he didn't commit. My heart would be racing out of my chest if I was here. One thing I wanted to point out before we move on to other things is the similarities between the end of Metal Harbor and Green Forest. For those unaware, Green Forest is the level you play immediately following Metal Harbor. You have an 8-minute timer to beat the level before the whole island blows up. If you remember, the song that plays at the end of Metal Harbor is called Can't Stop, So What? Well, the song that plays during your run of Green Forest is called Won't Stop, Just Go, playing directly off each other. Also, Metal Harbor helps set up the idea of a level having some sort of time limit. While it is much shorter in Metal Harbor, it still introduces this mechanic that we can use immediately in the next level. Now that we've talked about the level and the music, there are just a few miscellaneous things I wanted to discuss, and also give you some tips if you ever feel like speedrunning this level. If you just want to hear my closing thoughts on this level though, skip to the timestamp on screen now. The first of these is Sonic's voice lines he can say throughout this level. He could say one of 3 voice lines at any time. Those are,
Well, better get going. I'm out of here. I'm impressed.
he has a much more melancholy tone when saying these lines. Almost like he's sad or disappointed that the military is going after him when he did nothing wrong. I'm not too sure though, so if you have any ideas, then just please let me know in the comments down below. Like in other levels, we can find Big the Cat fishing in this level right before the missile that we hitch a ride on. I'm glad he can get some fishing in before he meets his demise, because he is way too close to this missile to survive the blast. I reached out to my community on both Twitter and YouTube and asked them what they thought about Metal Harbor. The general consensus I got from people is that while it's a super fun stage, it's very linear, which is good on the first couple of playthroughs, but ends up getting stale because it feels like you've seen it all before. The set pieces are all pretty cool, and the A rank is really hard to get on this level, which drives people away from liking it as much. Finally, I have just a couple of speedrunning tips I've picked up over the years that I want to share real quick. You can jump out of both of the giant loops and land next to them if you want to shave a couple seconds off your time. Instead of attacking the first set of beetles, do a spin dash and right before you hit the rings, go to the left and jump under the second platform. There's no collision on the underside of these platforms, so you'll clip right through it and you can quickly get to the next spring, and if you time it correctly, light speed dash through this section. You can then charge up a spin dash, jump, and homing attack the last beetle to save some time over homing attacking a bunch of enemies. Once you pass the next checkpoint and light speed dash forward, you can jump over the second set of dash panels and just jump around the half loop instead of running up it. If you're really good, you can time a precise spin dash into a jump, then immediately followed by a bounce and homing attack. If you do all this correctly, then you can make it to the other side, saving some time. Near the final checkpoint, you can just spin dash jump around these enemies to save a second or two. But now for my favorite one, you save some massive time climbing the missile. After you take the small rocket leading towards the giant missile, jump down to the base of the missile and stand on this section of the launching pad. If you start charging up a spin dash, let go of the action button and jump, you'll gain some massive height, skipping over running up the whole launch pad entirely and saving a few seconds. From there, you'll either clip through the floor under the spring and be launched into the missile, or you'll go flying above the spring and you'll need to navigate landing on the spring to save a few seconds over just running up the side of the launch pad. It may be difficult to learn at first, but once you get the hang of it, you'll be using it every time you play this level, unless you're going for that A rank. All these little skips save time, and you won't be getting that A rank, but it makes the level so much more fun and enjoyable. So, why do I tell you all this? Why do I go into way too much detail about this level? Simply put, this level is the epitome of speed that Sonic Adventure 2's speed type levels are built around. Metal Harbor is definitely the most linear level in this whole game, but that's not a bad thing. In fact, it's the very reason that makes this level so much fun for me. The developers have created a level where the path is super straightforward with hardly any alternative paths to shave off time. So the community had to come up with their own ways to shave off time in this level. There's no clipping through the floor or exploiting the game's mechanics to shave off a minute of time. It's just a bunch of small optimizations that in a collective whole, that will turn your 2-minute run into a 1.5-minute run. Speaking of that, this is by far the shortest speed level, tied only with Shadow's Sky Rail if you play perfectly. If you've noticed, about every 1.5 minutes, a small counter has been ticking up on the upper right side of your screen. Well, that's been counting the number of times I've been able to beat Metal Harbor since this video started. Right now we're on run number 15, which just goes to show how short this level truly is. But because it's short, it's just such an easy level to dive in and play, and it's so much fun. There's no waiting period when you start the level. You don't need to wait to finish grinding on some rails, or wait to stop snowboarding down the streets. You just go, and that's the way I like it. So hopefully I've made a good argument as to why Metal Harbor is my favorite stage in Sonic Adventure 2, and probably one of the best levels in the entire series. It has some really cool set pieces, amazing speedrunning potential, and an all-around fun level to play. If you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, or haven't played it in a while, then why not use this as an opportunity to stroll through memory lane and escape from a military prison. Thank you all so much for watching. If you made it to the end of the video, then you should consider subscribing and leaving a like on the video. I want to make more of these individual level analysis type videos, and give you a perspective that maybe others don't have on some of your favorite levels. Let me know what levels I should cover next, and as always, I hope you all have an amazing day. Peace.